Murdoch.
Time is 27 minutes to 9. The author William Dalrymple has made his writing career in that edgy area of history where West meets East and cultures clash and coalesce. In a speech at the Edinburgh Book Festival today, he's going to attack the way we talk about Islam in this country. William Dalrymple is on the line from Edinburgh. The Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens is in Oxford. And we're also joined from Broadcasting House by Rena Azim, who's a barrister and edits the website Britain's Asian Assets. William Dalrymple, what is the main point of your case?
I'm going to be attacking the idea of the clash of civilizations, the idea that Islam and Christianity have always been at loggerheads. I think since 9/11 there's been a great tendency to assume that these two great religions have always been enemies. I'm going to be arguing that the ties are far deeper, far more complex than I think most people expect.
But you see a destructive tension between the two in Britain at the moment.
I think certainly we've seen lately an extraordinary rise in Islamophobia. In one sense, you know, it's quite understandable following the Islamist attacks in September the 11th. You know, it's quite understandable that people are going to be trying to come to terms with militant Islam. But what we've seen recently, I think, and what's very alarming, is the tendency, both by sort of outrightly racist groups, by the British National Party and so on, to kind of muddy the distinction between moderate, popular Islam and the extremists. And we've also seen that in magazines like The Spectator, in The Times, and indeed with Peter Hitchens in the Sunday Mail.
Well, I'll come to Peter Hitchens in a moment or two, but Rana, Azim, do you recognise that picture of the public discourse in Britain today as far as Islam's concerned?
Yes, I do, because I don't see discussion and debate. What I see are scaremongering headlines and mudslinging generally that are backed by very little fact. And I see columnists who air their prejudices rather than really debate the issue.
And William Dalrymple's point is that that is not just, as he sees it, in the extremist areas of political debate, but in mainstream journals and newspapers as well. Do you think that's right?
Well, I do, because I'm actually a male reader. I read Peter Hitchens, so I'm very familiar with his work. And when I see threats about Islam is a threat, when I see headlines like Islam is a threat to our civilization, I just wonder what sort of James Bond villains Peter Hitchens mixes with.
Well, I think that is one of your pieces, Peter Hitchens, isn't it? Would you care to address that?
Certainly is. And I think, first of all, let me object to the use of this foolish word Islamophobia, which has already popped out. It's yet another attempt to classify an opinion as a pathology. Islam is a huge social, cultural and political project, which, if introduced in this country, would change it utterly. And if it became much stronger in this country, it would also change it utterly.
Well, hang on. When it was introduced into this country, what do you mean by that?
It has a number of very... You may like it or you may not. There are a lot of attractive things about it, but it has very many fundamental differences from the Christian thinking, which has, by and large, formed our laws and institutions in this country for the past 1,000 years. And therefore, if we were to adopt it, or if it were to become more powerful, it would change us. Therefore, it needs to be examined, like any other political philosophy, critically and in debate.
Is there a false premise there?
The moment you start using, if I may finish, the moment you start using terms such as Islamophobia, you prevent that from happening, because you start saying, well, what to oppose or object to or debate or criticize Islam is in itself wrong and is classified as some kind of racialist mania, which it isn't. It's a perfectly reasonable position to take.
If you could hold on a moment, Ron Azim, I'd like to discuss that question of the use of the word Islamophobia in a moment or two, but Peter Hitchens, aren't you using a false premise? Nobody is suggesting that Islam should in any way become the religion of this country.
Well, nobody is suggesting it, except I think probably some Muslims in this country would certainly like it to be so. What is the case is that Christianity, as a practiced religion, believed in and followed by the majority of the population, has practically collapsed here. There is a vast moral vacuum into which Islam is to some extent successfully moving. That's why a lot of conservatives like me have, for the past many years, looked on Islam as an ally, because it is fundamentally conservative about a lot of things that we're equally conservative about. But that is why it's advancing so much. And if you look at many cities in this country, particularly in the Pennine towns, Islam is a very strongly established religion with a very powerful presence. I'm not saying that it's about to take over the country or anything ludicrous like that. I am saying it now exists among us as a major force which needs to be taken seriously, studied seriously, and argued with in an open and rational manner.
William Dalrymple, by using the word Islamophobia, you are demonising a set of opinions opinions as a phobia?
I think no one objects to any sort of reasoned debate, but what is worrying is when Peter's articles are headlined, Islam is a threat to us all, a threat to freedom and civilization. We had on the front of the Spectator last week, the Muslims are coming. I mean, these are very explosive headlines, and it leads, at the end of the day, to bricks going through mosque windows. I'm talking from Edinburgh, which, you know, most people would regard as a very genteel city, but I got a letter a month ago from a professor here. He said that of a very small group of his PhD students coming from Muslim countries, 4 had left this year because they'd suffered extreme violence. One had had a brick thrown at him as he came out of a mosque, another had had petrol put through his letterbox, a third had feces poured through his window with his wife and daughter. And this is what the sort of hysteria generated by Peter Hitchens and the Spectator, along with the kind of
that's a very extreme charge to make. That's a very extreme charge to make, isn't it? But to say that there's a direct link between an article in the Spectator and the sort of columns that Peter Hitchens writes and the kind of abuse that you're talking about there.
I think there's a direct link between media hysteria about Islam and direct violence on the streets. Yes, I think it's a clear link.
Rana, just a moment, Peter Hitchens, because Rana Azim wanted to come in. Yes.
I think there is a direct link because that's what people have told me. I recently carried out a survey, and it was non-Muslims who were saying, who were Asian but not Muslim, who were saying that the hysteria, and I think that's a good word, in the media, does have an impact on the society that they live in, because at one time they were living very well together, but now people see them as terrorists, because that is the word that is used constantly and unrelentingly in the media. And it's not surprising that people will look at an Asian person of whatever religion and think that maybe he is a threat to my way of life, which is how it's being presented.
Peter Hitchens, you're guilty of hysteria.
Well, all those who in any way try and stir up hatred against Muslims are to be utterly condemned, and I have never hesitated to do so and have frequently condemned them.
But
I think it is
just a moment, William Dalrymple. William Dalrymple, just a moment. Let's see what he's got to say.
I think it's very again, it's dangerous to try and as it were, smear an opponent through guilt by association with allies he doesn't have, doesn't seek, and doesn't encourage. What I'm saying is there needs to be a serious debate. Now, there are people on the other side. I've visited, for instance, Islamic bookshops in this country which sell virulently anti-Semitic publications. There was the famous case of the church in Bradford, which was set on fire by youths who were almost certainly Muslims, and the Brownie leader on her way to a meeting at that church who was actually pelted with rocks by people who called her a Christian bitch. Now, I must just say, this does go both ways. Nobody in their right mind would encourage it. What I'm saying is there needs to be a debate about this powerful and important new philosophy which is now making itself known and becoming daily stronger in our society.
Thank you, Peter Hitchens. Quick final word from William Dalrymple.
I totally support the need for a debate, and I think that's very good. What is worrying is when articulate ideas, such as Peter has been airing on this programme, appear in print under the headline, Islam is a threat to us all. One seems to encourage hysteria, the other seems to encourage debate.
Lots more to talk about, sadly.